Now, ladies and gentlemen, the best budget, the best looking, and best feeling knives inside CSGO in 2023. Now, this series out of nowhere throughout 2022 when I first started it has been a huge success, a hit, some may say. It started out where I was doing the best cheap, best budget looking knives for $100 and under. People really seemed to like it. Then I started doing 200, ranged all the way up to 5 or 6. But then I started finding myself when I was doing the $500 to $600 ones, because they would be almost a monthly thing, the series would be extremely outdated and it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to keep the older videos public and on the channel. Some of those knives have 3 or 4x'd in 2022. So with that, this series has to keep being remade. Today's episode of Best Cheap Knives for CSGO in 2023 is for $200 and under. These budget knives aren't my favorite. The $200 range, let alone, is not my favorite. I would say the $300 to $400 one is the best bang for your buck, or $100. And of course, we're gonna be using buff prices.
Now today's video sponsor is of course SkinsMonkey. SkinsMonkey is currently the easiest and also fastest way you can buy, but most importantly trade your CSGO skins. All you have to do is make sure you have your trade link, and on your first trade, if you have a leftover balance, it goes towards your current balance that can be used the next time you end up trading skins. It has 3 ways you can inspect, but most importantly has a very in-depth inspect feature that you can see corners on a karambit, for an example, that you can't really see otherwise unless you have the item in-game. If you end up topping up your balance, make sure to use promo code Mando to get up to a 35% deposit bonus and a free $5 on the first trade.
Number 1 is the Huntsman Doppler for $199 US, almost pushing that $200 range. Extremely close, but it looks absolutely amazing. This is a pretty good looking knife. Now, finding the phase, most likely it's going to be in the worst phase you can probably find, but you can still try and snipe one on a place like Buff or really any other third-party site. You're kind of going to the higher tier territory with something like this, but once again, you're just not there yet, but I also think there's a lot better budget options on this list. Number 2 is the Bayonet Rust Coat. Now, some may say this, well, is a coat. I would say so it is myself. It goes extremely well with my type of gloves that I have, which is pretty cool. Also goes pretty well with vanilla gloves, and well, a decent inventory at that. The brown, I know a lot of people don't like it because it looks so rusty, and these knives, with no pun intended, have always been shit on, but I would say this is a very, very good budget option in my personal opinion, just because of the wide range of things this thing goes with, but also on how cheap you can get it really on any kind of knife, especially the bayonet, karambit, even butterfly. You're pushing the very lower tier category, but with an extremely higher tier knife. Number 3 is the survival knife Slaughter for $197 US. Now, the survival knife at the beginning when it first came out wasn't my favorite knife. I've really come around to it though. It's one of my favorites, especially with the pull-out animation, especially how it looks in game and how it feels. It's very similar to the Ursus. You just have a wider range of different pull-out animations, inspect animations, and of course skins you can get on it. This, for being the almost exact same price as the Ursus, I would definitely take this any other day, especially for it being cheaper. I would say in the next few cases that it get added to CSGO, we're probably going to see chroma finishes on these. God, I hope so. But the Slaughter is just an OG one, looks extremely good, and it looks kind of small with the Slaughter, I will say. There's also some other options with this that we'll get to later in the video. Number 4 is the Huntsman Lure Field Tested for $180, or a Tiger Tooth version of the Huntsman Factory New for $186. So an extra $6, you can get also a very similar knife, but also some people might not like that. The Tiger Tooth for me would go a lot better with my gloves, but if you have something like the Omegas or even defaults, either one goes great. Now the reason I picked the Lure is because, well, the Lure is a pretty expensive skin, especially if you go past that field tested category on a lot of higher tier knives. This is a pretty higher tier skin on a decent budget knife, and I think it looks extremely well, especially if you're going for that budget inventory of maybe a few $100s and under. This is definitely something you might want to look into for yourself. Number 5 is the butt plugs, otherwise known as the Shadow Daggers Doppler Phase 2 Factory New. These are $170 on a place like Buff. The reason I picked Phase 2 is, well, pretty much all the prices for every single phase for these things are very, very similar. I think they look extremely good. They're one of my favorites. Are these knives my favorite thing in the game? Absolutely not. But you get 2 for the price of 1 essentially, and even a little cheaper on top of that. The only thing I don't like about the Shadow Daggers, we'll get into later as well, is they shake your screen when you pull them out if you look very carefully. Now, does it affect your game? I'm pretty sure it doesn't. Pretty sure this has been a fact that's been proven, but they're a decent budget option. Number 6 is the Classic Knife Blue Steel for $180 US in the factory new condition. Now, this for some looks like a fake black pearl, including me. I'm not the biggest fan of black pearls, and well, even if you don't, you still get somewhat of a higher tier knife, at least in your mind, in your game for only $180 rather than paying maybe a couple more zeros added onto that price tag. I think this looks pretty good. The Classic Knife has been one of these things that has risen risen up this past year quite a bit. I wouldn't say too much to popularity, but rather just being rare because people aren't really unboxing it a whole lot. But it's still one of those knives, especially if you're playing from 1.6, you're gonna like your time playing with this thing. The classic knife is best described for me anyway as a reversed M9 bayonet pull-it animation. It feels pretty good when opping with it, and it's a severely underrated knife, I would say, but it still looks like a glorified butter knife in many ways as well. Number 7 is the Nomad knife Urban Mask for $175 US. Now, the Nomad knife for me isn't my favorite, but I gotta say the way the skins are put onto this knife is one of the best looking things I've ever seen inside CSGO. We also gotta talk about how I recorded this gameplay and the rare pull animation happens twice in a row. I don't know how rare that is, but it seems to be pretty rare. This thing with my gloves looks pretty insane. The pull animation fails to get boring and just looks good every time. I would say this is one of the better budget options for your list alongside the Huntsman, getting a very good bang for your buck. The Urban Mask is just one of those knives I feel like very similar to the Rust Coat. They're just really frowned upon because of their price. They just look extremely good in my personal opinion for actually how much they cost. Number 8 are the Shadow Daggers Fade factory new for $165 US, otherwise known as the butt plugs. You're getting the price for 2, but really for 1 knife. And that for me is a pretty steal deal. This is the very first time I've ever looked at a pair of butt plugs inside CSGO for 190 bucks, let alone any price range, and I've actually been wowed by them. I think these look absolutely fantastic, and for a budget of only 200 bucks and under, this is pretty damn good. The great thing about these is you can get a pretty high fade percentage for under 200 bucks, and these things really pop, especially if you're using some sort of budget tier, really any sort of gloves at all. They even pop on mine, the colors don't really match whatsoever. I would take these any day over something like a gut knife, and most likely over any other butt plug combination, just because of how the colors pop. Number 9 is also a very frowned upon knife, but this is none other than the Falchion knife Marble Fade for $191 US, pushing that $200 mark. Now, this is a knife that has been frowned upon for many different reasons. I would say the main one being is the pull-it animation. It's extremely dry, it's pretty boring. It also looks like a glorified Swiss Army knife, and well, I don't like that, and same with some other people. The other crappy part about it is, what some people don't like, including myself, is the finish of the skin, whatever one you get on this knife, covers the entire blade besides the middle, and that's not something everyone always likes. It kind of just goes on forever, and kind of just makes it look like you're looking at a blob. But if you can get past that, I gotta say, when you pull this thing out and you have an inspect animation, you press FR extremely quickly on your keyboard, it looks pretty cool. It has one of the cooler inspect animations in game, not as cool as the butterfly, but it looks pretty good for that $200 mark. Same thing with a lot of other skins for today's video. You're getting a pretty expensive skin on a pretty cheap knife inside CSGO. And of course, that leads us into number 10. Number 10. This is the Flip Knife Blue Steel minimal wear for $186 US. Now, for this price range, you can actually get a lot of gold on one of these knives, making it look like a fake gold gem. And even for a couple $100 more, if not a little less than that, you can actually get a gold gem, which is pretty cool if you can find one, because they're extremely rare. But this thing, I gotta say, looks absolutely fantastic, especially for the price. That's what I gotta keep in mind here. It's not everyone's favorite skin, not everyone's favorite knife, but it's definitely looking good for that price range. But compared to the other ones, I gotta say, I'm definitely taking a Huntsman or those butt plugs or something else. The Flip Knife's really nice if you're a main opper, you're an old Kenny S fan, because that's what he used to use back in the day. But besides that, I think there's a lot better options on today's video. Let me know what you guys think of today's list. I think it looks pretty good. Hopefully we can do the $300 list very soon, before maybe we have to restart the list because knife prices are going up so much. Let me know what you guys think. What is your favorite knife from today's video? Are you going to pick up any? Peace out, guys. Stay positive, stay sexy.